Hello, my name's Philippa Waller.
My name is Penelope Waller, and we are two of the directors at 4D Human Being.
And welcome to the 4D Human Being podcast. What's it all about, Pen?
It's all about your personal and professional relationships. It's about your communication skills, how you lead, how you work and build teams, how you are looking after yourself and your well-being, and how you are much more at choice. What do we mean by that?
Well, sometimes we can get a little caught in patterns in life, and we can all be a little bit on our automatic pilot. So 4D Human Being is all about helping us get back to choice and being a four-dimensional human being. And your fourth dimension, of course,
is intention. So whether it's about your impact, your leadership style, your team dynamics, whether it's about your well-being, whether it's about your communication or your presentation skills, anything that involves human beings interacting with other human beings, 4D Human Being are here to help.
we're going to take a deep dive and look at some tools, insights, theories that are going to help you go from a 3D human doing to a 4D human being, so that you can happen to the world rather than the world simply happening to you. Hello and good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. It's nearly evening.
It is nearly evening, so we've had to pop the old lighting on, because that's... What was that? I was looking at something the other day. It was something about... it was on a BBC sitcom, Amanda Land.
Oh, yeah.
Something like, what people don't understand is that, the sort of the most important thing on social media is the lighting.
100%.
And you sort of go, in life.
Cento per cento.
Cento per cento.
Although... this is probably the lightest we've had for a long time, isn't it?
In terms of the actual world out there, not the lighting
No,
inside.
not the lighting, although the lighting is good. I do say to clients all the time, lighting, lighting, lighting. And when they do it, they go, oh, yeah.
Two things on that, because I saw this had come up for you with somebody as well, and it's come up for me a number of times. There's something going on with clients' online setup that for some reason recently we've had more than usual, the number of people was more than usually looking away from the camera.
Same.
Yeah. And I think there's something that's happened in almost like the tech has sort of been set up and it's, it's advanced, but somehow the camera has split.
It has. And so I had this conversation.
And I've had it with clients. And I'm like, and they turned up the second time and I was like, and then the third time I said, right, this is now at the top. I know, I'd already had the conversation. I said, no, this isn't a nice add-on. This is an absolute must.
Yes, and in fact...
you've got to be looking, your camera has to be where you see me on your screen. If you want to look at me on your screen, it's got to be where your camera is.
Well, I would say...
so that you're looking...
I would say three things on this film.
Yeah.
So the first one
is... I'm just going to have a sip of my zero beer.
She's got a zero beer. It is Friday. Three things on this. First one is...
crazy.
I think... the tech has advanced where people have got sort of better cameras, but they are then positioned in a certain place as opposed to being integrated in their computer.
Even off centre, even off centre.
The second thing I would say on this is that I talk about this to clients and actually demo to them what it feels like to be spoken to without eye contact. And the research shows it's very difficult to stay engaged. The third thing is I have found a laptop or computer screen camera with a flip down arm, and it's absolutely amazing. So
they exist.
So what I love about that is that the tech keeps up with the tech.
Yeah. And we're all, and the humans are desperately trying to, running behind. But there are these wonderful drop-down cameras now that you can, even if you've got a really big screen and your camera's on top, you can get these little drop-down arms. That means you can absolutely be looking at your screen, the picture, image on your screen,
your slides or your audience.
But it looks like your audience feel like you're looking at them.
Yeah.
We innovate. So this is a really, really good segue to what we're talking about today. Which is energy contagion. And the big question is, are you a thermometer or a thermostat? And the link to what we've just been talking about is you are far more likely to be energetically and emotionally kind of contaging and affecting someone if you're looking at them, particularly when you're working online. Like if you haven't got the magnetism that you might have in the room,
Yeah.
then you want to be using everything you've got on screen, and you certainly want your tech helping you. But so this is the question: thermometer or thermostat? What do we mean?
I absolutely
by that?
love this kind of mini campaign that we're doing around thermostat and thermometer, and it's a really lovely analogy, Phil. But I'd expect nothing less from you. And really thinking about that conscious choice, that conscious intention in terms of what we are either putting into the room or just accepting and measuring from the room.
Exactly. So a thermometer reads the temperature in the room, and a thermostat sets the temperature in the room, or indeed the fridge.
And both useful.
And both useful. So exactly that. There's going to be a whole lot of stuff coming soon on polarization and pole positions, because I'm getting really into that, because you just hear it so often.
This is right, that's right.
Or I'm that, not that.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, all of this is about range. All of this is about coming in from our polar extremes of that's not me, I would never, or I always, and that's totally me too. I have this flexibility and range, and I can adapt to situations. I can walk into a space, I can read that room, and if I think something needs to change, I can shift the temperature and the emotion in that room.
Sometimes the thermostat's useful.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just want a thermometer.
And sometimes we want to sit in the middle and we're working it. So,
what do we mean by thermostat?
Yeah, what do we mean? So exactly. So what are we really reading? And and this isn't just for leaders of organisations or leaders of teams. This is for everybody, because what's so interesting about this is, yes, you sort of think as a leader that you'll be setting the temperature in the room, and I don't mean heat, although you might be doing that as well.
But the tone,
the energy, the feel, the atmosphere. And you probably are a lot of the time, because obviously hierarchy and authority, we'll talk about that, plays a big part.
Yeah.
But you might not be. You may well have people in your team, or one individual that has a really powerful impact on your team. So it's happening all over the place. So yes, this is to call out to leaders. Definitely get aware of whether you can read a room and shift a room, but also offer to your people the insights. Pass this podcast on, get them a 4D on demand impact training course, come and talk to us. Help other people understand the impact they're having. Because one of the things we're going to talk about is, of course, that it might be really obvious to some people, more sensitive, but other people, they might not. They seriously might not be aware of it. So when we talk about thermostat and thermometer, we are reading the mood in a room.
Yeah.
We're reading what almost from the mood that we're reading, we're then making assumptions about what's okay here in terms of behaviour. How much am I allowed to say? What am I allowed to say? What kind of language can I use?
What's expected from me?
What's expected from me? What's the kind of... Is it informal in here, or is it formal? Like, what are the rules here? And of course, that also is about energy. Yeah. So is the energy low, flat, non-existent? Is it high? Is it high negative? Is it high positive? Is it low negative, low positive? And I mean, when you think about the amount of pieces I've just mentioned there, we are reading that in a nanosecond. 100%. And you can read that and you can shift that in a tiny moment.
Exactly.
And if you are going into a space to try to deliver a motivating message, I'm laughing because I'm already imagining it, a motivating message, and you haven't taken 1 or 2 seconds to think about the quality, if you think about farming, the quality of the soil onto which you're about to throw that message.
And you're at the mercy of anybody or somebody in the space that wants to set the temperature, set the feeling, set the tone, set the energy. You don't know where it's going to go.
And you might have prepared this wonderful message, and you're about to throw it on barren, negative soil.
Exactly. So we talk a lot at 4D about the fact that we often focus on the intellectual dimension. So preparing our message, preparing a script, preparing the agenda, knowing what we've got to say, prepping our team in terms of bits that they're going to say. And that's all hugely, hugely important. But the thermostat and thermometer analogy is such a beautiful way to think about that. Can all be really great and well prepared. But if you haven't thought about the energy you as a leader are going to take into the space, or the tone you're going to take into the space, or if you know that there's going to be a certain energy or tone coming from your team that may or may not be helpful, that's much more likely to set the agenda of the meeting than the actual content you've prepared. And we have much more control over this than perhaps we think we do, both in terms of setting it and in terms of adapting to it.
Well, exactly. And even if, let's say, message-wise, you don't have the full picture, you don't quite know what's coming up or what the strategy is, or let's say you've got an issue or there's some negativity or there's some problems to overcome, any of these things, you're still going to be better off if you set a different temperature. If you can, what's the analogy? The analogy is we've got a problem to solve or an issue to fix, and we can either do it in the pouring, battering rain, or we can do it under a blue sky on a sun lounger because the weather feels good. Now we're going to problem solve. And I'd much rather problem solve.
Totally.
With, people having a zero beer or a cup of tea.
100%, Phil.
Under the sun.
Especially on a Friday afternoon. And
what
I would say to that is, in terms of the prep work that we put in, and it's not that we can't be bothered to do this, to think about what the energy and tone is going to be. Am I going to be more of a thermometer or thermostat, accepting the tone or setting the tone? It's not that we can't be bothered. It's just that we don't really often think about it. And yet, if we think about the efforts we'll go to make sure that the energy and temperature in our own houses are okay. I mean, I can think about a holiday that I came back from. I arrived home on New Year's Day and my heating wasn't working. I got my ladder down, I was up in the attic, I was rooting around, I was on YouTube trying to find out how to set the temperature. I'll go to any length to be comfortable and make sure that the temperature in my home is okay. And yet, day after day, we go into meetings and we don't even really think about it. We just kind of accept what feels a bit chilly in here, what feels a bit heated in here, and we don't think about the effort we could put in to shift that and change that. And we really, really can.
Yeah, we really can. So there's something called entrainment, which is if you put a load of clocks in a room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, this is pendulum clocks, by the way. This is not digital clocks. That's
the good old days of
very different conversation. If you put loads of old-fashioned pendulum clocks into a room and they're all swinging away, all different sizes, eventually they will all sync up.
That's true.
Into the biggest, most dominant clock in the room. And this is another good analogy about what happens in a space for us human beings. The energy is incredibly contagious. Now, there's loads of science around this of sort of why it happens, and there's so many factors that go into it. We've got, quite frankly, literally energy. We are energy, and then we're emitting energy, and we can feel that. You can feel it before anybody says anything, or you walk into a room and you're like, you just something doesn't feel right, or this feels good.
Yeah, and don't think your teams don't feel that.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. If you're standing outside a room and thinking, I'm absolutely furious, but I'm going to put a smile on my face, they're going to feel it. So we've got literally the energy. We've got
you are the grandfather clock of pendulum.
Exactly, you're the grandfather clock. Exactly. They're all going to feel it, and they might all then pretend, and then you're just in a fake toxic positivity.
But it will all entrain. Is that a word?
It will all entrain. Exactly. It will all contage. It's like a virus. Energy's like a virus. So we've got the energetic piece. We've also got the mirror neurons, of course, and the neurocoupling that we get into sync with each other. That's also connected to peer influence, or as Cialdini would have said.
Well, Matt says Cialdini.
Yeah.
But because I lived in Italy for so long, I say Cialdini. Yeah. Now I don't know.
Well,
the Italians would say Cialdini. The C and the I are soft.
Well, so that it's whatever you choose, isn't it? So Cialdini. Social agreement he would talk about, so that if we are if you imagine a group of teenage girls, and you've got four of them being really jolly, and one of them shows up and isn't in a very good mood, she may very quickly be left out unless she starts picking up on that jolliness, because that's the tone that they've said. I mean, obviously, it might be the case that they might turn to her and say,
sorry, you're not having a great day.
Jilly, are you okay? Yes. But in terms of that sort of underlying, without going into any sort of particular issues or conversations, the general tone of a group,
if that doesn't fit,
if it doesn't fit, then eventually they're going to go, this is much fun. We're having, this is my birthday party here. So there's social
cheer up, Jilly.
So there's for Jilly. So there's social agreement and norms, of course, that again birthday party, the norms.
Yeah, this is how we do birthday parties.
This is how we do birthday parties. We don't all turn up and sit with our arms folded and go, this is awful. And of course, we've also got hierarchy, which is a big piece, exactly as you talked about. So the eyeballs are going to go to the person with authority, and that is the strongest place to set the tone.
Do you know, our colleague Matt made a really good kind of analogy or visual of this today, because we were talking about hierarchy in terms of exactly this, the power that hierarchy has, even if you don't particularly want it. So it might be a social dinner and you're just there, and there's lots of members of your organisation there, but you are the most senior person in the room, whether you want it or not. The analogy is, it's like imagine a large sheet that was sort of strung up or held up by its four corners, and a massive bowling ball gets thrown into it. That's the leader. And all the other people are marbles. What happens when you put them on the sheet? They just sink right down to the bowling ball.
You've also just described the space-time continuum, of course, because the universe is sort of like a mesh. So you've just described reality.
Which is
what it is.
Which is very similar.
Yeah, don't get me into split particles, because spinning at different.
But point being, even if you're being sort of relatively inactive as a leader or relatively passive in a space as a leader, the energy is drawing itself towards you. Yeah. So you can make a choice as to whether you're accepting the energy that's coming towards you, or you're going to push some energy out and create a different atmosphere there.
Absolutely.
As you say, the eyeballs are on you as a leader.
Yeah, and I just want, and also just to give a nuance to authority in a room, of course, it might be the leader or the boss or the client or customer who's come in and you're pitching at, let's say, and you will feel that focus pull towards that person. But it can also shift, and it will be more nuanced, because you might have a subject matter expert in the room, or you might at one point need clarification on something, or we used to do exercises on status. If you've got an important meeting in a room and there's been coffee spilt all over the carpet, well, the person with the most status now is your janitor and facilities assistant. So it's not just about who's leading, it's going to shift. Or if you've got a person with particular experience who's done something similar to this before, they might be more junior in the space, but if they're sitting there huffing and puffing with their arms folded because they've got historic information on something, that's going to have a contagion.
Totally, and it's a really good point, Phil. And as leaders and team members, it's really about being aware of where the energy shifts are happening, and then secondly, is this useful?
Yeah.
Do I need to respond to this, or do I need to change this?
Absolutely. And that's sort of, the old 80-20 as well. If you've got 10 people in a meeting and you've got one who's very negative, exactly that. You're reading the room. Where's this negativity coming from? Is this important and useful information for me? Do I need to pep everybody up and change the energy of the space? Or have I got 9 people who are actually really engaged and on board here and positive, and one who's negative, and actually what I need to do is play to the majority so that the minority just becomes irrelevant. So, there is more complexity to it. But if that one person is contaging everybody, and you walk into a space and you realise that, I'm going to say it, Bob in the corner has contaged the group into negativity, then you probably want to do something about it.
I think our next podcast should be Go Bob.
Poor Bob.
Poor Bob or Go Bob.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we should champion and celebrate Bob.
Yeah, because there's plenty of amazing Bob. A quick word from us at 4D Human Being. If you're enjoying the show, please do click follow so that you can have the 4D Human Being podcast instantly in your feed. And we'd love it if you liked and reviewed us. Let us know what you think. Please do think of 1 or 2 people that you could share the 4D Human Being podcast with. Somebody who would really benefit from the content you're listening to right now. Back to the show. So I want to talk about a couple of more things. There was some research done, a gentleman called John Cacioppo, who's definitely, I would say, of Italian.
How are you spelling that, Phil?
Cacioppo. Okay. And that's...
My daughters, who are half Italian, are going to go nuts for that, because that literally means catch poo. So I don't know if that is his actual name. But if it is John, I don't know how you fared in school.
He is a researcher who looked at how the sort of social science of contagion, and there are a couple of things to think about, and some really easy ones like expressiveness. And it really made me think of drama school training, where you're working those facial muscles, because the more expressive we are facially, the more we're using those muscle fibers in our face, the more other people are likely to mimic us.
Yes, it's so true.
It's incredible.
So
if that we can think about contagion from an energy, gesture, attitude, but also if you've got a flat, non-expressive face. So I'm really, really excited about what's happening here. It's going to be far less contagious for people, because those mirror neurons are going to be firing off. If your mouth and face are moving a bit more, and you've got to feel a comfortable level for you, but that is going to fire off your mirror neurons so much more, and people will mimic. So when they go and talk about this strategy, if you've got a flat face, they go, oh yeah, John talked about the new vision, it sounds really exciting. Or if you've been expressive, John talked about the new.
Well, it's really interesting you say this, and I don't know if we think about this enough in the workplace and the world of leadership. In fact, I would say we don't. We always say we come back to the physical dimension, which includes the facial expressions, because we just don't think about it enough. And I was watching a sketch of the British comedian Michael McIntyre the other day, which some people love and some people don't. And he's very based on sort of situational day-to-day humour. And I was watching it and observing his actual words in terms of his the humour of his content.
The content, yeah. And
what I noticed was that it was nicely scripted, but it wasn't actually that funny in terms of the content. It was 100% his physicality and his facial expressions that made us laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's that commitment.
It's that commitment.
Yeah.
And firstly, I think he's so smart in his comedy because of that.
Yeah.
But secondly, great comedians are signalling all the time to their audience how to feel and how they want their brains to light up. And we have that. We have that possibility as leaders, but we don't really use it as much as we could.
I think that what a beautiful nugget to think about, that you are, through your own energy, through your own attitude. So we talk about putting a word in your head. So if you don't put a word in your head, then your default mood is going to come out. So if you're a bit annoyed about something, that's what they're going to feel. Or you put a word in your head like curiosity, open, warm, supportive, whatever it might be, excited. So your energy, your attitude, and your physical gestures and expressions are not just contagion, but signalling. I mean, we can really use a much stronger word. They are signalling. This is, I'm coding you, I'm priming you.
You need to
what to feel about what I'm saying. But and the thing about the physical particularly, I mean, energy also, you can get yourself kind of pumped up before going to a room. That's very easy and practical. The thing about the physical is it's really, really tangible.
Yeah.
We're not,
and powerful.
We're not talking about some sort of, slightly complex model that needs unpacking and understanding at some sort of deep level. It's really simple, accessible tools.
And it's the first thing that will trigger people's brains into trying to understand, what's this message, how should I be feeling, what's my reaction to this.
Exactly. And think about people that who contage the group, who are not, maybe thermometers. We're going to come on to the extreme ends of this. Maybe they're thermometers, maybe they can read the atmosphere, read the group.
And adapt.
But that they are thermostats, that they can come into a space, they can meet you down the pub, and they can dial up. They will partly make the night. And think about what it is that they're doing. Are they slipping in quietly and sitting in the corner, or are they taking up some space, and are they expressive? Are they welcoming? Do they have an energy level above a 4? Like, what is it that they're doing? And if it's the other way, if they're dragging the group down, what are they doing? Really start, we say this so much, become a social behavioural anthropologist. Really look at, what is it that Bob, I'm going to give Bob a win here. What is it that Bob, the real, the party guy, what is it that he does that means that when Bob turns up, something shifts?
And similarly, if you go into a space and you're thinking, I don't need to be a thermostat here, I don't need to dial it up or dial it down, I need to adapt my energy level to what's in the room. Similarly, the physical dimension is your best friend. We so often say to people, if you go into a space and there's some concern in there or worry or sadness or whatever it might be, open your palms outwards rather than going in with either crossed arms or hands down with palms down. Just that simple gesture will make people think that, you've read the space, you know how I'm feeling. So the physicality is so useful in terms of both setting and adapting to the tone of a room.
And you don't have to have all the answers. If someone's struggling, for example, you don't, the brain could go into panic. I just saw something today which I love. The thinking and thinking will eventually lead to increased fear.
Yeah.
The doing will eventually lead to decreased fear. So if you do something physical, like open up your palms, as you say, open your hands upwards and have that open gesture and soften your expression and say something really simple, like, John, I'm sorry that this is difficult at the moment.
That will make a huge difference.
It'll make a huge difference.
And similarly, we often say to people, particularly when they're presenting on large stages, to take up that higher gesture play, which can often feel very unfamiliar to us. But again, if you want to set the tone of motivation and excitement, the quickest way you can do it is through higher levels of energy and physicality through your gestures.
Absolutely.
So you have the power to do both quite quickly, probably quicker than you think, in terms of setting and adapting to the tone through your physicality. It's not the only way.
Yes,
but it's a really quick way.
It's a really quick way. So think energy level, scale of 1 to 10. Think how much space are you taking up? How high are your gestures? If you're in a meeting room, can you get your hands above the desk to open up your meeting, for example? Think about expressions like the smile, eye contact, how much you use your face and how much you open your mouth. Again, if I give a message and I say this is really exciting with my mouth half closed, it has.
I'm like, I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't buy it. It has such an impact. Whereas if even by using more facial muscles, I'm saying, oh my goodness, this is going to be great. So.
I believe you.
You believe me. You've got lots and lots of ways. The speed at which you walk in, you've got loads and loads of ways.
And we haven't even touched on language in terms of the energy that you put into a space.
Literally the language that you use, the words
and
that you use.
I'm just going to go back to what we said at the beginning, because we really sort of talked about energy and physicality. Just to say again, how important this is to think about whether you're being a thermostat or a thermometer. It's fun. We love talking about this stuff. But honestly, it's so powerful and so important in terms of your leadership and your team motivation and even your family,
your life experience. So I want to say sort of two things on this. I want to talk about the extremes, but before I do that, I want to just mention that your personal happiness, let's go there, your personal happiness will to a great extent be dictated by the people that you surround yourself by.
This is true.
And this is about... this is about... Anyway, I want to sort of mention the conversation we had earlier, but this is about people around you are also thermostats. They will be setting the temperature a lot of the time, whether you're aware of it or not. So you may, if you think about it now, you may surround yourself
in a positive or
negative way. So if life isn't great... Now, that might just be personal to you, but if you're finding that everything's a bit of a sort of drudge and a bit sort of an effortful, it's a good question to ask. When were you last with somebody or with a group of people who really helped lift you, who helped shift the energy and emotion for you? Because we will be so impacted by who we spend our time with.
And it's not that other people are responsible for that. It's that we are both responsible for that. We can do it ourselves, but we are all impacted and contagious by other people. And we just are.
Well, this is it. And so it's a really good question, that especially when we're dealing with change in organisations. I mean, when aren't we dealing with change in organisations? Through tough times. Yes, of course, we're all human. We like to complain and we like to gossip and we like to moan. But it's a really good question to ask. Have you been contagied into a way of being that is now just the way of being? That's just what happens around here. And can you take some responsibility for starting to shift that? The next time someone comes up to you, rolls their eyes and says, oh, you'll never guess what this is, this is a nightmare here. can you find a way to say, I really hear you. And do you know what? Fancy a walk out in the sunshine? Or I heard that you did that thing last week. It was so good. Like,
or I wonder what's the best way to respond to that, or something that's going to push you forward.
Can you shift it?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about the extremes. So, at the extremes of reading a room, particularly, because once we know the tools to shift a space, we can probably all do that. However, we're initially going to be impacted by how sensitive we are to a room.
Yes.
Or at the other end of the scale, of course,
how insensitive.
Or I was going to say maybe lower in empathy. And I really want to hold these very carefully, because neither's good or bad. But there is plenty of research now on highly sensitive people, HSP. There's a book, I think, called Highly Sensitive People by I don't know whether they're married. Aron is the surname, Aron. And that you can also, it's also sensory. So that highly sensitive to sensory input, and you know, and it's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful gift, in terms of empathy and understanding. Exactly, that you can walk into a room and can you feel it? Like, you can feel the nuance of anything that shifts in that room, or any tone or any atmosphere. But of course, it can also be really, really tough, because you're feeling it so strongly.
Well, it can make you very vulnerable in terms of your own mood.
Exactly.
And the impact of other people's energy. So it has that dualness about it, the wonderful empathy and strength of that sort of social intelligence. But then you're very vulnerable to what's going on around you, which can be useful if you need to get into empathy with other people. But it can also be very challenging if you've got other negative energy around you that's not helpful.
Exactly, it can make you very much at the mercy of what's actually happening. So, if you know that you are someone who has more of a highly sensitive nature, congratulations on all the wonderful gifts that gives you. And what can you do to give yourself those kind of circuit breaks? Would it be useful to leave the meeting or the room for 5 minutes? How can you use your breath to re-regulate? How can you literally turn the corners of your mouth up and sort of do a quick jump up and down in the bathrooms? What can you do if the atmosphere is negative and you know that you're like a sponge and it goes in? Go for that walk. Go and listen to that music. Take charge of it yourself, because otherwise it's going to take charge of you. And at the other end of the scale, if you know, and you might not, but this is worth checking in, that you're someone who isn't as sensitive, and actually, if anything, can lack empathy.
And is that real sort of transmitter in that thermostat way of really walking into a room and just thinking, well, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I want, and I'm going to push it into the room.
Exactly.
And it can be really charismatic.
Hugely charismatic. So even if you're hearing this and thinking, I don't know if that's me, then use the intellectual to literally ask yourself and ask other people, how's everyone doing?
Yeah.
If we put an energy number on this room, what would it be? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are we feeling?
Yeah.
You might ask the question of, where's our energy level today on a scale of 1 to 10? So you can ask questions through the intellect that means, even though you're not physically and emotionally able to pick up those signals, because you're low empathy, which in some situations
in that moment,
which in some situations might be really useful, because through tough times you're going to be able to drive through. But you do want the information that room will give you, and you do want to know if you need to change the temperature in the room. So ask the questions through the intellect.
So there's a couple of things I'd say on that, Phil, which is that you have choices and options in both of those states. If you're in the receiver thermometer type of energy or the kind of transmitter thermostat type of energy, you have choices that you can make. And the second thing I would say, just to reiterate, there's no good, bad, right and wrong. Both of these have got their advantages and their kind of vulnerabilities. So if you are somebody who's hypersensitive, as we said earlier, you're highly empathetic, you can understand and read a room, adapt to other people, and you are vulnerable to other people's energy and moods. If, on the other hand, you are much more of a thermostat and you're pushing out that kind of transmitter energy, that can be hugely beneficial in terms of shaping, changing, pushing through what needs to happen.
Motivating.
Yeah. And you may come across as less empathetic than sometimes you would like to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are you a thermostat? Are you a thermometer?
Can you be both?
Can you be both? Because actually, whether it's a fridge or a room... or a hotel room, you don't just want a thermometer, you want a thermostat, don't you? Because if it's freezing, if you've got a room in Iceland, you want a thermostat getting you warmer. And if you're in an ice hotel somewhere, or if you're in a tropical, I mean, we were looking at this, weren't we? Like the idea of going to a sort of ecological tree house is really nice, but has it got aircon? That's terrible. That's so terrible. I am really joking.
I was going to say after you said about, look, if you're in an ice hotel in Iceland, you might want a thermostat, although that could do untold things.
Actually, you want a duvet then,
but if you're cooking a turkey at Thanksgiving or Christmas, you definitely want a thermometer. Let's be clear.
And a thermostat. You definitely want to be able to set the temperature on that phone. We have gone off at so many tangents. But basically
both are useful.
You can think of any number of situations where you definitely want to read the temperature and you often want to change it. So full stop. It's all about choice. So ask yourself, the next meeting that you go into or conversation you go into, what is the weather like? Have you read it? Have you read the weather? And
have you got your jumper on?
Did you bring an umbrella? And what would you like the weather to be like? Are you the cloud? Do you need to pop your sunshine hat on? Or is everything a little bit disco rave and actually you need to bring a little bit of the old...
It's definitely Friday night.
Calm it down. I know, we've gone nuts. So, are you a thermometer? Are you reading the room? Can you be a thermostat? Can you change the room? And I want to think, I've got a Clint Eastwood, walk into a room, make someone's day. Go ahead, make my day. Make that weather, make that temperature in that room a place where the people walk out, and even if that was, I'm going to say it, an Excel spreadsheet heavy meeting, they walk out and they go, that felt good.
Yes, and if anybody out there is thinking, either I don't quite know which one I am, or secondly, I don't quite know how I can shift and change my behaviour from a thermostat to a thermometer, or the other way around, then 4D are definitely here to help.
Definitely here to help, and you can access us super quickly through our 4D On-Demand platform. You've got that free level, the Essentials, which, by the way, I think I've already said is getting a refurb. So in a few months' time, it's going to be super, super good. It's going to be cracking, even at the free level. And of course, you're going to soon be able to not just buy for your whole organisation, but you're going to be able to buy individually the 4D On-Demand courses. Yay. And you can have the live experience. I mean, stop it. What a treat. We wish you well. Go spread the joy, spread the love, go and read the room, and go and give people the weather that they really, really want.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 4D Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen.
I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today.
And of course, if you're interested in more from 4D Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D On-Demand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.